Before we begin the public hearing, are there any additional people that have logged in? I don't see any.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, yeah, I need to go through these because there's a few people that logged in.
Okay.
Because they're on a separate attendee list. So let me start off with Buck Taff. Are you can you? Because hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you there? Okay. Sure. Sorry, I'm trying to like unmute you and so are you because I gotta organize between, are you speaking on support or against or neutral?
I'm just here to listen, and if you guys have any questions of me, answer them on behalf of the airport.
Okay.
Not the Port of Pasco, just the airport.
Okay. All right. Cool. And then Caleb Stromstad. So are you speaking support or against or neutral?
That's Caleb Stromstad. We're in support of the urban growth boundary and proposed comp plan. We just like to see some minor modifications. And I've got two projects I'm going to speak to. Kohler property inclusion in the urban growth boundary, and then the land use designation for the Olberding property.
Okay, so yeah, well, okay.
I also have two other commenters that would like to speak that are all going to be speaking on my line as well.
Okay, who are the commenters that are going to be speaking?
George Dockstetter.
Okay, so you got George Dockstetter.
And Fred Olberding.
Fred Olberding. Okay. And are they speaking in support or against or?
I'm speaking against.
Mr. Dockstetter is speaking against.
Against. Okay.
And then Mr. Olberding is speaking on behalf of the land use designation on his property that he would like to see changed.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just put you guys over into the neutral or against because it's in the same category. So we'll have you guys on that section. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Yep.
And I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Oh.
Go ahead.
The two individuals from the Port of Pasco, are they staff members or are they commissioners?
Well, Roger, I'm kind of getting through that right now. Yeah, I'm going down the list of people that are going through it. So I'm trying to see if they're for, against, or neutral, or like I'm literally going down the line right now. Because there's a bunch of people that logged in like right at the last minute, right before we started, to answer your question there.
Maybe those individuals can say if they're a staff or a commissioner.
Mr. Taft is a staff person for the airport.
Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't, I know we wouldn't be in violation, but if it was commissioners, we could potentially have a.
Sure.
This is Buck Taft with the port, and there will be no, to my knowledge, no commissioners on this meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Staff.
This is Stephen McFadden with the port. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Marketing. I'm considered staff, and as Buck said, we don't expect any of our commissioners to be present for tonight's meeting. And it's nice to meet you all. This is my first meeting since joining the team.
Okay. All right. Yeah, actually, since Steven just spoke, I guess I could just go to him real quick. Are you just kind of here as like a neutral observer, or?
So I'm attending on behalf of the port to answer any questions if you have any for us. Otherwise, I'm a neutral observer at this point.
Okay, so you're just neutral. Okay, so yeah, we'll just move on. And then John Gruber, I know you're from West Dot. I believe you joined us in the last meeting. Are you speaking for, against, or just a neutral observer? Again?
I'm just an observer. We're not planning on making any comments. So.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then got Mary Hadley. Are you speaking for or against, or? All right. Is Mary there? Hello? Okay, I guess she's not responding. And then, Mac Platts, used from West Dot. So I assume you're just kind of a neutral observer as well?
Yes, I'm a neutral with the aviation division and here to provide any technical assistance on that front.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I believe that's it. So we can kind of proceed, I guess.
Okay, I will then declare this the public hearing CPA 2018-03 to be open. Does any commissioners have questions of staff? I think we've already kind of went through that already. Is there any others? So then I guess we're asking for testimony from the city now. Is this right?
If the city's got anything that they would like to add to the record or discuss, or if there's anything in particular, or we could just go in. Again, this is an opportunity for the public to speak to this matter primarily. And I don't know, did either Jacob or Rick, did you have anything that you want to do as far as a formal presentation, or more just see where the questions go and respond in that? I didn't know if you had anything prepared.
Thank you, Derek. No, we have a brief presentation, and Jacob Gonzalez will go through that, the city's senior planner. He's completely technically proficient in this process. He's got a lot of work. And he will be able to rapidly go through a presentation and leave plenty of time for public comments. Thank you.
If there's no questions from staff, why don't we go on in then and let Jacob give your presentation.
Yeah, and just to clarify, no visual, no PowerPoint, but we do have some language we wanted to add. Hopefully the Planning Commission received the additional supplemental letter that the city submitted today along with the exhibits. Again, the city appreciates the opportunity to be before the Planning Commission again tonight. And as we indicated on December 2nd at that workshop, this item went through an extensive public process, meeting the requirements of the State Environmental Policy and Growth Management Acts, along with the City of Pasco's own notice requirements in Title 25-210. And again, just to reiterate that the intent and purpose of an urban growth area per the State Growth Management Act is to answer the question of does the area included sufficiently accommodate the projected population growth as given by the Washington State Office of Financial Management and allocated by Franklin County? Does the land that we propose sufficiently accommodate 20 years worth of growth? And we believe that the environmental impact statement, the supporting analysis, including the expanded infrastructure analysis, fully supports the city's proposed alternative number 3 for accommodating 20 years worth of growth in Pasco's urban growth area. So the letter that we had submitted today, we just wanted to clarify some of those points about the land areas that we were expanding to and why, and those that were left out and why. Again, the entire purpose is to become compliant with the RCWs of the state of Washington. And refer back to the simple question of, does the land that we've included sufficiently accommodate the 20 years worth of growth? And out of the 3 alternatives developed in the environmental impact statement, alternative number 3, which is before the Planning Commission tonight, was deemed the most appropriate and compliant with state law. So again, on behalf of the City of Pasco, appreciate the opportunity to be before you again. Myself or Director Rick White are happy to answer any questions from the members of the Planning Commission or those in the virtual audience as necessary. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Well, I just have a question. I was asked to be spoke on. I am one of the landowners that was.
Miss Hadley, I specifically tried to talk to you earlier. Are you for or against?
I'm against. I'm against.
So, okay. So you'll have to wait until you get to when we talk to the people that are against section.
Gotcha.
Yep. Because that's why I was trying to get where your position was, and you weren't responding. So that's why. Okay, so I'm gonna mute you until we get to that section, and then you can speak. All right.
Well, then, right now, if Jacob's all done with his talking, then we'll go into, are there any testimony either would be in favor of the urban growth plan of Pasco?
Well,
real quick, I would also ask if there's any questions from the Planning Commission specific, or does the Planning Commission desire to wait to hear testimony before asking their questions?
Well, I would like to make a comment. I've read on what the city of Pasco is doing for low income and homeless. And as far as I read, I commend them on their plan in helping to provide low income housing to keep the people off the streets. And so I wanted to make a statement on that. Open it up to, does any of the other commissioners have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I'll reserve my questions after I have a better understanding of what everybody has said.
Okay, then is there anyone that's on the line wants to speak in favor of the urban growth plan in Pasco? Okay, hearing none, then we will move on to testimony that's either neutral or against the urban growth plan of Pasco. Now, Aaron, what about the one lady that had called? Or is that for another time?
Well, that's I thought that's when we get to that section where they're testimony anybody's neutral or against. So that's why I'm kind of.
That's where we're at.
That's where we are.
That's where we're at. Oh, okay. Well, why don't we start, because we already kind of we'll start with, I guess, Caleb, because he has a couple other folks that are against, and we'll just do those guys first, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So let me, okay. Okay, let's see.
I had asked earlier if anyone was in favor, and I got no response.
Correct.
Okay.
So I moved into those who are neutral or against.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Caleb, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Members of the Planning Commission, city staff, this is Caleb Stromstead, Octary Engineering. There's two items I wanted to speak to tonight. The first
Can you
one being
speak up a little louder?
Yes, absolutely. Is that better?
Not really, but it'll work.
All right, sorry about that. The two items I wanted to speak to, and I'll hit them very brief. The first one being Deborah Kohler's property. It's right at the northwest corner of Dent Road, at the northwest corner of the urban growth boundary. And we spoke about it at the December 1st meeting, and there's just a couple points I wanted to clarify for the record. We have been participating in the planning commission at the city and the city council meetings, and there we did in fact speak to the October 5th city council meeting. Commissioner Link questioned our attendance at that, and I did go back and review the meeting, and I did speak on the record at that, so I wanted to clear that one up. The second one was Mr. White had referenced an email from Big Sky Developers concerning that property and developing it at the half-acre density, and that is in fact correct. And I guess it bodes more to the point of Mr. White and I are not developers, and that was one of the options that they were considering, and it actually does pencil out to do that. Obviously, if they can get a higher density, that would be more beneficial for the development, but that's kind of a moot point right now. We're talking about an urban growth boundary. How that property is zoned, how it's developed is several land use processes in the future, and it's not worth it to get into the weeds of what it could or couldn't be. It's simple. The landowner wants to sell the property and develop it at an urban density, and the first step is to get into the urban growth boundary. And she's specifically requesting 76 acres of her property be included in that. And another comment that was made at the last meeting was, would this require any changes in our environmental impact statement? And the answer to that is no. The city did a very thorough job of their environmental impact statement. They analyzed 3 different alternatives. Do nothing.
You just minimized the window.
I did?
Yeah, that's all you did.
Thank you.
So,
the alternative 2, which took the urban growth boundary all the way up to Fanning Road, included Mrs. Kohler's property. And so there would be no change to the environmental impact statement to include this urban growth boundary, or include this land in it. The second one is, can the county make changes to the urban growth boundary? Absolutely. This is the county's property, and the city's requesting that their urban growth boundary extend into the county, so the county does have the final say. And just to give you another idea of how fluid this document is, in late 2019 was the first time we saw this proposed alternative 3. And I compared a map today of the different land use changes from that original alternative where the capital facility improvement plans were done to where it stands now. And I roughly estimated over 150 acres had swapped land use from various land use designations throughout that period. Of note, in August, 140 acres were removed from the original urban growth boundary proposed by the city in March, north of the Taylor Flats, Columbia River Road intersection. And at that same time, 40 acres of industrial land were included. And so this was all happening during the comment period and within the bounds of the environmental impact statement and within the bounds of the capital facilities plans. So our request to include the Kohler property in the urban growth boundary is compliant with the environmental impact statement, and it is compliant with the capital facility plans. Now, it specifically was excluded from the most recent one, which is true. Jacob mentioned that last time, but the first capital facilities plan was done in 2018, if you remember, for the alternative 2. And again, the Kohler property was included in that. From an engineering standpoint, you can't really get down into the weeds on a 76-acre development, including if that's going to upset the city's capital facility plans, because the short answer is it won't. To be honest with you, the city's having problems right now with their sewer facilitating their current urban growth boundary, and they're working to fix that. So yes, the city has the facilities to service this property. It is merely a matter of preference at this point, and we would ask that the county planning commissioner give Mrs. Kohler their time, because at the end of the day, the developer and her want a fair shake at this, and they just don't feel like they've gotten a fair shake at the city. And so that's why we're still carrying this issue into the county. I'd be happy to stand by and answer any technical questions, but that's it in a very brief summary. And I could pause there before I give a brief intro to the Oberding property, but I'd like to answer any questions specific to the Kohler property if there are any.
Claude, you were muted, so you need to
Have any questions for Caleb?
Yes, this is Commissioner McMullen. Currently, that 76 acres is under production of grapes right now, or is no longer farmed?
That's a great question. It used to be under grapes. It hasn't been farmed for several years now. And so it's just wasteland right now. The grapes are all dried up.
Okay, and the trellising is still there, or the land hasn't been denuded of the former crop that was viable at one point?
You are correct. Last I was there a couple months ago, the trellises were still there.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for staff. Mr. Chair, this is the property that we reviewed at our last meeting, if I'm not incorrect.
For the rezone request to RC1?
Correct.
This is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, are there any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on.
Yeah, so, and I believe, so Caleb, you had like a couple other, or are you?
Yeah, I'll do a quick intro to Fred Obering's property, and then we'll, then George Dockstetter and Fred Obering will follow behind me.
Okay.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so real quick, just to orient everybody, we don't have a map to point at, but if you're familiar with Pasco, if you're heading north on Road 68, and you're just north of town, or before you get to the end of town, there's Burns Road. You can take a left. There's some new development going on over there, and you cannot take a right. If you could take a right and you would drive a half a mile to the east, you would get to Fred Obering's property. He owns over 100 acres there, and specifically if you look at the land use map, which we'll prepare some documents for the next public meeting so we can actually point to these. But in short, there's a 15-acre commercial island that the city's land use map shows, and it's a half a mile from Road 68. There's no direct access from Road 68 to get to that property. And we've been unsuccessfully trying to get the city to change that land use designation to a residential land use. Mr. Oberding has a developer, Big Sky Developers, under contract to buy the land and to develop it residential, which is what it would be good for. And we're kind of coming up against a brick wall. And this is really just a common sense application. 15 acres of commercial is quite a bit. To give you an example, the Lowe's building and parking lot area is about 17 acres. And the city wants a 15-acre island of commercial out in the middle of the sea of residential that's, you can't support that much commercial. And Mr. Dockstetter will speak to that from a real estate standpoint. From an infrastructure standpoint, it's pretty simple. The roads don't exist. And then from a planning standpoint, again, like I mentioned earlier, land uses can change, and we can show you several iterations of the maps that have taken place over the last year with this alternative 3, and the land uses changes all the time, and that's totally within the scope of this. And from the county's perspective, this is kind of reaching into the city's playbook. This is their comprehensive plan. These are their land use maps, but this land is in the county. And so and Derek, if you could speak to this, if the county adopts this, it's my understanding that the land use governs, but the county determines the zoning. So if there's a commercial land use in the county, does that mean that the county rezones that area, that farmland, to commercial? Can you answer that one, Derek?
Derek, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I know that. I'm thinking before I speak, which is why I hadn't said anything yet. Yes. Okay. We have agreements that God, now I'm Nicole, if you're there. I don't want to say this wrong. The county controls the zoning, but it's the city's land use comprehensive plan that kind of tells us what zoning to apply. So, for example, in, what people call the West Pasco, Riverside, or Donut Holes, you look at the city's comprehensive plan, it says low density residential. Ours says low density residential, if I remember right. But it's our RS20 zoning that's on the properties. So if this is zoned or is provided as a comp plan, 15 acres of commercial land is kind of segged out, then most likely the county would also adopt that zoning to match that. Otherwise, we'd have a conflict between the underlying land use designation and the actual zoning for the property. So yes, we have a mix there of how and those. So I guess yes. The question is, if that property is zoned as commercial, it's likely that the county would, designate as commercial in the comp plan. It's likely that the county would zone that as well, to a commercial setting, or vice versa. If it's changed to residential, we would apply a residential use. Okay. Again, one of the things that we're mandated to ensure in the UGA is that we don't, once it's been adopted and it's defined, that we don't create conflicts that basically make it so that the city cannot move forward with their comprehensive plan. And that's why when we're reviewing the UGA expansion request, we're looking at conflicts with the county-wide planning policies, potential, making sure it complies with the Growth Management Act requirements, as well as does not create a conflict with our comprehensive plan. If it doesn't, then it is what it is. They've done their work. But if Nicole has anything to say or speak to that, clarify, please do. You need to unmute though.
Sorry, I didn't realize that my other button was muted. My bad. Yeah, I'm happy to help out with that. Mr. Chairman and commissioners and staff, there is a difference over here in how this is kind of organized and implemented. So in other parts of the state, you'll find that urban growth areas are designated in terms of their land uses by counties, and the counties assign the zoning. Benton County and Franklin County, they both are doing it a little bit differently in that the cities are setting forth the land use designations, and that's been the way it's been done historically. And that can be supported, and the way that is supported is that the city sets forth the desired land use designations, and then the county will need to provide zoning that supports that. The zoning does implement the comprehensive plan. So it's kind of an interesting situation how that all occurs in the case over here, but that's the way it's been working. I would also emphasize that it is still the county who will be giving out the permits for any development that occurs prior to annexation. Now, once an area is annexed by the city, then of course it has to be zoned by the city in accordance with the city's comprehensive plan. And then at that point, the city would be the ones doing the permits, also giving preliminary plat authorizations, things like that. So it's a little bit different than other parts of the state, but that is how we're doing it here. Because of this, it's important that we go through and look at any changes that the city is making to their zoning code and make sure that it doesn't need to be verbatim the same in Franklin County, Franklin County's code, but we need to make sure that we have the right types of categories so that we can say, yes, we are implementing the comprehensive plan for the different types of designations.
So I just want to take a moment. Late and Low just logged in. So just to kind of let you guys know what our commissioners did. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question of staff on the issue of rezoning county properties to what the city's comprehensive plan is.
Go ahead.
I would assume that we would not do a pre-annexation zoning or a comprehensive zoning change. We would wait until somebody came forward with a zoning request and that either meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan or not. Perhaps you could answer that, Nicole or Derek.
So what I'm hearing you ask is whether or not we would unilaterally, so we go through the process, all this is adopted, the various land use designations are put out there. And are you saying that, are you asking whether or not we would change the zoning at that time, or wait until a landowner requests for that zoning to be changed?
I'm assuming that the latter would take place. We would wait until a zoning request came forward rather than going unilaterally and making all of these pre-annexation zoning changes.
Well, okay. So again, it's going to, some of that's going to potentially depend on the zone that's being proposed. So right now, most of the land right now that's looked like, for example, in the UGA expansion is AP20 ag land. Are you, so what I guess your question is, would we then like say, oh, now your farm's residential unilaterally without them asking for that? At this time, it wouldn't work for us because we don't have, we would need to wait for that request to be made because you have active farm. It's not like I'm going to go and turn their active farm necessarily into a non-conforming use. And in fact, I don't think our regulations allow for that process to occur that way at this time. Generally speaking, though, what happens is your comp plan and your zoning map, your comp plan land use designations are supposed to match with your zoning designation. So I don't mean the density specifics. Good examples along 395. We've got a lot of industrial land. It's got an underlying zoning designation of industrial. Some of it's still under an ag zone. Technically, that should be converted to an industrial designation. And at some point it should, because right now they're in conflict. So what happens is when an industrial user comes in to potentially utilize those AP20 properties, they have to actually get the property rezoned before they can do the industrial use, because the zoning is not an industrial class, designation. So we will need to go through and kind of look at those scenarios and how those would be approached. But generally speaking, that is the case. Now, whether or not we would do that, again, locally, things are done a little differently than you may find in other jurisdictions in the state. So current practice in the county is to wait for the landowner to request that rezone.
Thank you. That's what I was assuming.
I'd like to add a little comment if I can.
Good.
Thank you. So there are policies in our countywide planning policies that likely address this, and I'm looking for that right now. But what I can say is that it would be premature in many cases to change zoning before the infrastructure and other amenities to support the higher densities are in place. Certainly sewer is a major factor behind all of that. So it's a little bit of a problem, to be honest, because we're going to have, in some cases, a comprehensive plan designation that doesn't line up with the zoning, but it'll be important to phase that out as appropriate, so that we're not providing entitlements to property prematurely. It does say in the countywide planning policies, just trying to see if I can find it here. Full range of urban government services will be subject to the annexation policies of the adjacent municipality. Basically the idea here, if we're extending the urban growth area, is that the preferred method is for the lands to come into the city being annexed prior to development. It's not really to set a line out in the county, change the land use designations, and then let development to occur with the county permitting it and with no city services. The idea is for the city to gradually, expand through annexation, extend their services, and that's when the development should occur so that it's at that right density and it can be addressed. So it's a timing question. And so that's probably something we're going to have to look at as we get further down the line before this goes to, kind of a final recommendation as how such phasing can occur and should occur, and if there is any area right now that could be zoned in kind of an area-wide rezone process to eliminate inconsistencies between the comprehensive plan and the current zoning, where that can occur. So where there's already, maybe a transportation system, or maybe where it's close enough that sewer could be added or could be extended in the next few years, like looking at the transportation and other amenities in terms of a concurrency standard. Thanks.
You mentioned annexation. The city didn't start annexing the major portions of the UGA until I believe about 35 years after the UGA designation, and I'm assuming that we're going to have the same situation occur in the proposed expansion of the UGA. It'll be some time before annexation takes place.
As is always the case with these scenarios, the development is going to determine that. The request of the landowners is going to determine that, and then the city will need to, they'll be determining that as well as to whether or not they're ready and primed to annex those areas. The first UGAs that you referenced earlier, those were all developed, but we didn't see the unprecedented growth that we've seen in the last 5 years. Back then, in fact, my understanding is, I guess I should say 10 years. But yeah, you never know with these, and that's why the analysis is done, and that's also why the UGA expansion is generally to be as conservative as possible to accommodate the growth, in order not to bind up those properties or to give false hope.
Can I ask a question of Jacob or Rick? The 15-acre parcel that's zoned commercial, what were your visions of that, or what do you see happening out in a commercial island like that?
Jacob, go ahead. You've got a handle on this. Thank you.
Certainly, and thank you for the question. And actually, we have that area was actually a larger commercial area, and we did try to compromise with the applicant and Caleb in particular on revising that so that there was some sense of compromise on what the city needs, and obviously not to impede on what the private property owner would like to do with their property. What we do know is that the Pasco School District is proposing a site out there for a potential high school. The same challenges regarding lack of access exist whether it's commercial or residential because no roads exist there today. So that argument is the same. Additionally, the lack of commercial opportunities in the city of Pasco and Franklin County were a significant, they were highlighted in the Somos Pasco effort, which was a joint effort between the city of Pasco, the Port of Pasco, and Franklin County, with support with the Benton Franklin Council of Governments. In fact, a lack of commercial opportunities in residential neighborhoods was identified in the report. Commercial and retail access in residential neighborhoods meets the state's Growth Management Act, the RCWs and planning goals for multimodal accessibility. It is in alignment with the Benton Franklin Council of Governments and their long-range transportation plan. It's in line with the Franklin County planning-wide policies, also the city of Pasco's ongoing policies. So the idea that locating a sea of residential with some commercial inside, that's the very reason why you would want to put commercial there, is so that those neighborhoods don't have to, what we have right now in the city of Pasco is the only commercial opportunities for retail and groceries are on Road 68. And so Burden Boulevard, Burns Road, Santa Fe Parkway, they're all nearing capacity, and that's today. And so by continuing to only put commercial on one specific corridor would essentially be us not learning from the mistakes that we see today. This is a practice that many cities are trying to learn from and recover from before it's too costly or the congestion problems are not able to be mitigated. So the city of Pasco is simply just trying to implement what's already been told by us in the numerous economics efforts and planning policies. So in short, locating small pockets of commercial and residential neighborhoods is well regarded in planning practices.
Thank you. That cleared it up a lot. Thank you.
So I'm going to walk down to a Lowe's and buy lumber and things like that and carry it home. Is that the intent of the commercial in the residential areas? That doesn't make sense to me.
Jacob?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's rather difficult to go to commercial activity where I go to the store, or I go to the auto parts place, and carry home what I've just purchased.
Yes, certainly. I guess a hypothetical that would make sense. However, we are also trying to address the lack of transportation accessibility. It's difficult if you're not traveling by car. It's also difficult if you are in a vehicle. So this isn't an effort to address walkability, although it would benefit that potentially depending on the surrounding developments. This is simply making your trip shorter, which is a state goal on reducing vehicle miles traveled and vehicle hours traveled. So again, simply locating commercial areas on very limited corridors just increases the congestion challenges the metropolitan region will continue to experience.
And I just wanted to clarify what I thought I understood, that this whole thing, this isn't about walkability. It's not about being able to walk to work or anything like that. What you're talking about is, instead of me driving 5 miles to get to something, I drive a grocery store, I only drive a mile, or all of us congregating to one area. This scatters that potentiality. That's what I understood Mr. Gonzalez was saying, and I would have to agree that it is supported by planning to try to minimize that cross-town travel when you can allow for potentiality of closer places. Again, the market's going to dictate who or what locates there, and the availability if that type of proposal was played out. you know, you'll also hear there's a big push for like mixed use development. That's more of your walkable community type of a style where you've got stores and residences all mixed together and you're walking around going to the resident. When you're looking to really emphasize walkability, that's more the type of development you'll start to see is that mixed use, because exactly what you said. It doesn't make sense in a walkable community to put a big box store or something like that. But that's a different scenario that I think than what Mr. Gonzalez is just describing, which is it's to reduce the number of vehicle trips on, say, for example, Road 68, that those get spread and scattered throughout so that they're not as hitting. That was what I understood Mr. Gonzalez would be saying. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that.
Yeah, that'd be correct. And also want to reiterate, and this is something that Caleb Stromstad had mentioned, is that the land use has gone through significant changes since the county saw this in the fall of 2018. And I think the city expects the land use to continue to evolve as we operate, hopefully under a new comprehensive plan. We have a process for that. It's the comprehensive plan amendment for land uses. So that's an established process, which I believe the city would certainly believe we're going to expect to have applications for members of the community seeking land use amendments. The city certainly doesn't object to that. They need to be well vetted and well analyzed, but there is a process for that. Land use isn't stagnant, they evolve. And although not in today's presentation, but as part of the comprehensive plan application the city submitted to the county, an updated alternative to land use was a significant part of the comprehensive planning process.
Any other comments?
Okay, yeah, let's skip back to, because we kind of seem to have gotten off in a few corners here, because I know Caleb still had a couple other folks, I think, that were going to speak. So let's get to them real quick.
Thanks, Aaron. This is Caleb Stromstad. Just one last point. I'd encourage the Planning Commission to just pull up an aerial map and look at the Road 68 corridor north of I-80 or 182 and south of Sandifer. I'm looking at it right now, and about 60 to 70% of that's built out. And you can't even get commercial property. You can't even get commercial property developed adjacent to Walmart that's a block off of 68. And so 15 to encumber Fred's property of 15 acres, a half a mile north of Sandifer, a half a mile east of Road 68, doesn't make any sense. And I just want to point out one thing that Jacob said that is entirely incorrect. If that property were to develop as residential, yes, people would not be able to access that directly from Road 68, but people are willing to drive to their homes in a roundabout way. They're not willing to drive in a roundabout way to commercial. So Fred's property supports residential development as it stands now. It absolutely does not support commercial development. And I just needed to bring that to your attention, but I'm gonna turn it over to George. You wanted to say something?
Thank you. This is George Dockstetter. I live on Self Landing Road, and I own Desert Hills Realty and been in the real estate business for going on 45 years. I know most of the commission, and I appreciate the work and effort that you take from your own personal lives to put into this, but I'm here to speak against option 3 on the urban growth boundary. This thing started, and basically we were supposed to have it done in 2018, which I'm sure most of you are aware of. You've already rejected it once and sent it back to the city. But there are several things that are wrong with option 3 over option 2. And one, when we first met with Dave Zabel and Dave McDonald and the stakeholders out there, all the property owners were invited, and people didn't want in, such as Roundy's, north of Clark Road, We got their property removed. People like Fred Oberding and Steve West were told their property around Clark Addition could be brought in, but they had to go negotiate with the port. And so they went and sat down with the port commissioners and gave up easements across their property so that they could be brought into the urban growth boundary. And in the meantime, after this happened, we ended up with a new city planner, which is fine. I know Dave was ready to retire, but all of a sudden there were changes made to the plan and we were told we couldn't come in and meet about it. Rick White said, wait till we're all done before we get your comments and you can comment at the planning commission instead of coming in. Yet they turn around and Dave Zabel and them meet with Tippett's, and Tippett's get their property brought back in to option 3 after it was kicked out when it was first presented, but they don't want to sit down and talk to any other property owners that are affected. And I know the planning department likes to quote Council of Washington, whatever it is he was talking about, and the Commerce Department and the Growth Management Act and all that. But you have to understand, all those people are a bunch of bureaucrats from the other side of the mountain trying to tell people on this side of the mountain how they have to live and how small the lots have to be, and we have to build up, and we got to have everybody walk everywhere and ride their damn bus or bicycle to work and to the store. And the city planner at our last meeting with them, with the Association of Realtors, told us their study shows 65% of the people in Pasco leave town and drive to work. So this walkability, all this garbage that the bureaucrats from the other side of the mountain want us to impose on us over here, so we live like them. I'd like to see it rejected, and at the minimum, have you oppose option 3 and go back to option 2. But in reality, if we're going to grow 50,000 people and you kick out the industrial property, you don't even have to kick it out. Leave it in. We're still talking 15 people to the acre. And that's a hell of a lot of people when you're doing 5 houses to the acre, not counting commercial or industrial property that's being brought in. So what's that do to our density levels out here? And it's not about what we want. It's about what are our kids going to live in? What are our grandkids going to live in? You know, we've all been around long enough. We've got a fairly nice house, or we've got a piece of property. We're pretty well off. But what about your kids and grandkids? Let's quit thinking small and start thinking a little bit bigger and going back to where when somebody's word meant something in a negotiation, they kept it and didn't go change it and then say, oh, well, you can't comment on this. We're going to do this and then you can comment. I wasn't raised to do deals that way here, and most of you on that planning commission that I know and have dealt with weren't raised that way either. So I appreciate your time, and I respectfully request you reject option 3 and at least go back to option 2. Thank you.
Does Jacob or Rick want to comment on that?
I will, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Mr. Docksitter's comments. Unfortunately, they're a little misconstrued with what actually happened. The EIS process involved at least a 100-day comment process. We received comments all the way back in May of 2020 regarding the proposed urban area expansion. And frankly, the land use alternatives, I'm not sure that Franklin County Planning Commission should be much concerned with those, candidly. However, his comments are noted. I would want to point out, though, that a rough average of the introductory level single family home in Pasco is approaching $350,000 now. And we're not talking about a custom home. We're talking about a bare minimum home on a lot that the developer has made a profit on. There are affordability problems that we are experiencing, and they're showing up in terms of our down payment assistance program that we have through our block grant program and foreclosures. I'm not so sure that expanding the urban growth boundary is going to address those very pertinent issues to home ownership. We have noted a significant lack of opportunity in Pasco in terms of choices of housing. We are doing our best to address those. The city has received funding from the state of Washington to explore affordable housing options through a variety of regulatory measures. We brought those to our planning commission just this last month, actually just this last week. We will continue to do more at the start of the year to address affordability options. And candidly, I'm not sure that expanding the urban growth area in particular is anywhere near a resolution for affordability.
I'd like to answer that if I may.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you what makes affordable housing, because basically I went to the city of Pasco in the mid 80s when we came out of the housing slump, and we did the first subdivision that had been done in about 8 years in the city of Pasco. I was involved in all of that stuff at Road 44 and Burden on both sides of the road. I was involved in the stuff there on Road 60 and Burden. I was involved in Chapel Hill. And I'll tell you what makes affordable housing is an abundance of ground, not a shortage of ground that jacks the prices up. If we really wanted affordable housing, we'd expand all the way to South Landing Road, because there's guys out there further out that would pay $30,000 or sell for $30,000 an acre instead of getting $80,000 next to the edge of the city limits. So expanding the growth boundaries is one sure way to make more land available to make a housing affordable. What you're doing by crimping the land use or the area that's being absorbed is you're putting a bigger premium on it. They have to go with smaller lots, crowd everything in, and there's never going to be affordable housing until you have an abundance of property again to be developed. Thank you.
I disagree, Mr. Chairman. I would like to point out that the affordability option is almost entirely dependent on cost of materials and the cost of extension of utilities.
That doesn't make any sense. No. You can't.
Okay, so is there a because I think there's one more person that still needs to speak, I guess, through Caleb's line.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Fred Oberding. I'm a Franklin County farmer for the last 60 some years, because I was 3 months old when I came from Idaho to the lower Columbia Basin. I appreciate you guys coming out a couple of days before Christmas. I thank you for that. I've been involved with this thing for about 3 years now, and when it appeared that some of my ground was going to be brought in, I was left with a decision. And the decision being, I'm a farmer, but I'm right on Burns Road. I know what it's like to farm against the city. I know how people let their trash blow over their fences and goes onto my property. And I'm also a potato grower for Lamb Weston. If there's any foreign material in my load, I can get my whole circle rejected. That means I own the spuds and nobody wants them. And it's just been a constant fight and battle to keep my fields that are adjacent to the city of Pasco clean. And we go out there every year before planting, after planting, and while we're harvesting to make sure there are no foreign materials out there. But they didn't come from us. They come from the winds we get and our neighbors to the south. First, I want to address that 15 acres that city of Pasco wants to zone commercial. That entire piece, or the entire piece, meaning 160 acres, I sold 80 of it, and it's a done deal with the Pasco School District. They're not going to build a high school there next year because of the COVID and everything else that's gone on, but they want to start in 2022. So I've already signed a lease to farm it again another year. And being a farmer, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this 15 acres if I have to live with the commercial zoning. I had it all sold to Mr. Greeno for all residential. And then I come in after the fact and find out that some of it's now commercial. If you've been out on Burns Road, as Mr. Stromstad alluded to earlier, you cannot go east off of Road 68 down Burns Road unless you got a four-wheeler or a motorcycle, because that's an unimproved road. It's a bunch of garbage. It's right up against the Bonneville Power Administration power line. That's why it's not developed. And they want to put this commercial development just to the east end of that. There's really no access to this piece of commercial property that they want to have. And me being a farmer, I had to make a decision. Do I want to sell this piece of property and maybe buy some ground north of Franklin County or in northern Franklin County? But now what am I going to do with this 15 acres? I don't have the water for it. I guess I could maybe put a fence around it, turn some jackrabbits out there and have weekend hunts. I don't know what to do with it. That would be my commercial operation, I think. Anyway, my other issue is with my other 160 acres that's south of Clark Road that was originally in option 2. But we got some opposition to that from the Port of Pasco. And in a meeting with the Port of Pasco, they says, well, you know it's zoned for airports, or we're going to fly airplanes over that ground. I said, so what's the problem? You read your title and it says that. He says, no, because what happens is subsequent buyers that buy a house out there hear these airplanes flying over, and first thing they want to do is litigate you, and we don't want litigation. So I says, well, if I gave you guys an air easement over that property, would you guys be okay with that? Sure. So I granted them an air easement over my property, and the problem went away. At least I thought it did. Now they come up with this section or option 3 and remove that 160 acres out of the growth boundary management area. And that, I want to reiterate that piece of property is south of Clark Road. It's right up against kitty corner to where they're planning on building the 3rd high school in Pasco. And it stifles me to wonder why we would want commercial property on its 15 acres right next to a high school. It stifles me to wonder why would they want 160 acres of sagebrush or farm ground right up next to a high school. It doesn't just clearly make any sense to me. Anyway, I'm asking 2 things for you to consider. Is one is putting my 15 acres back into residential because that's how it's already, it's already sold until this little problem come up. Number two, in regards to that, there's really, the access to that piece of property is horrible. And the second thing I guess I wanted to talk about was getting that piece of ground, my other circle, into the growth management area, because I know what happens when you farm outside the city limits. You become a dumping ground for people with their trash, people with their trimmings from all their plants around their house. It just ends up on your property. Usually done at night and dark, and I come out there Sunday morning, and then somebody else is out here. They've got a lot smarter. They used to leave some of their unused open mail, and I could read the mail, see who was to who, and just turn it over to the cops, and they'd take care of the problem. But these dumpers and trespassers have got a lot smarter. Anyway, I know I'm pushing on my 5 minutes, and so I'd like to leave the last whatever time I've got left to any questions you might have. And again, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Does Rick or Jacob want to address that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think any readdressing is necessary.
So I guess this is something that you guys are going to have to resolve, or at least take in consideration. So we'll move on then. Are there any others, Aaron, that want to speak against neutral?
So there was another Mary Hadley person, but it looks like she hung up or something. And then I don't know, I saw a couple other call-in user 5 and 6. Let me see if I can call-in user 5. Can you do you want to wish to speak, or hello? Okay. Call-in user 6. Is anybody? Okay. Well, I guess that's it. Everybody else, I guess, has spoke. So.
Okay. Is there any comments from staff or the commissioners that want to be made?
I don't have any at this point. Just, yeah, not at this point.
I wanted to follow on with some comments I made earlier, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We're on the topic of what designations and zoning it goes into the UGA. I do want to point to 2 policies which are in the countywide planning policies, so they apply here in this case. And these are policies for joint county and city planning within UGAs. So this is based on RCW, or excuse me, it's not based on, but it's policies that are required to address RCW 36.70A.210. Section 3F, and the 2 statements are, and it's numbers 28 and 29 of the countywide planning policies. First, city and county planning efforts will be coordinated within urban growth areas. And second, the county and each city shall jointly develop and implement development, land division, and building standards, and coordinate permit procedures for the review and permitting of new subdivisions within urban growth areas. So in other words, a policy has been set in place that says that more coordination needs to happen, certainly more than happened before, and moving forward. And so with any increase to the UGA, it'll be important that the city and county collaborate on development matters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other clarification needs to be made?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rick White. May I offer a comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. The environmental impact statement analyzed 3 alternatives, and it's our understanding that the Planning Commission and county commissioners must choose one of the 3 analyzed alternatives. A choice different than one of the 3 analyzed alternatives would involve a separate analysis. I would like to reiterate that the alternative number 3 represents the council-approved alternative. This is based on our sewer expansion plans, our capital facility plans, our land use plans, and taking into account the significantly rural type development associated with the Northwest Pasco area, specifically that south of, west of, and north of the Kohler area expansion. I understand that there are sentiments for including that within the urban area. It's my understanding that those development plans involve involve densities far less than what is urban, up to 2 units an acre. The city simply can't support that as urban development, and it in fact raises taxes for all within the county because of the cost of providing services. Be more than willing to answer questions related to the presentations tonight, and hopefully we can move forward with this on the next public meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Roger, you mentioned that you had some questions you were going to reserve until for the end. Do you want to address them now?
Mr. Chair, I think I've gotten all my questions answered as we went along. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other comments from staff, city, or commissioners?
I have a comment. Commissioner Vincent, it seems like the elephant in the room on the question of affordability and the expansion of the UGA has to be, and the collaboration between the county and the city has to do with the city's willingness, or the I should say the affordability of the infrastructure as it relates to the sewer expansion, which is huge as far as what Mr. Dockstader George referred to as the density issue, and if it doesn't make sense from an economic standpoint to push the sewer out, then those lots and that land becomes so expensive that they have to be closer to the city limits, basically. And that kind of determines the zoning that we're moving towards, and how the city and the county seems like they would work together on this issue. Because I get it. I mean, you can't push, if it costs way too much to push the sewer out to a low density situation, that's not working towards affordable housing. And yet at the same time, who wants affordable housing when you have lots that are going to be 4,000 square feet? It's just basically living vertically. So I'm just listening to this and trying to wrap my head around the economics of not only the infrastructure of sewer and water, but also the roads expansion. Because that's what we're talking about. Without the roads, without the infrastructure, this thing doesn't set up. the way I see it. That's just my comment on it. Thank you.
Is there any comment from the city on that?
Well, I will. I'm sorry. Go ahead. If somebody from the city wanted, I'm sorry if I cut somebody off.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. It is indeed a complicated scenario. And I don't have any fast answers for your questions. Yes, the utility extension plays a huge role in the affordability equation for housing. Yes, roads plays a huge role, as it does not only for affordability, but for the cost of becoming mobile and being able to access services and reducing our vehicle miles traveled per trip. Again, this is a 20-year projection. We have opportunities for amendments through our annual comprehensive plan process. It's not a perfect solution. However, through the EIS process that analyzed the 3 land use alternatives, it's the best that we can come up with at this point. And recognizing that there are also stakeholders in the process that are going to be very cognizant of what this means for many things, including impact on farmland, impact on environmental sensitive areas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I don't have any quick answers to your observations. I think they're relevant, but I don't know how to address them specifically at this point.
Well, and I appreciate that because that's kind of the seg in for me. Sorry, I've got to scratch my throat. I agree that, especially addressing affordability and all sorts of things, we have to do it together. And we're actually actively meeting at a staff level every other week for a few months, and then COVID hit. But going forward, regardless of where this boundary ends up, as Ms. Stickney stated as well, there's going to have to be coordination. There's going to have to be things that we look at. We're going to have to look at, do we need to put in standards that prohibit leapfrog development? I'm not saying that we're going to do that. I'm just saying that these are things that we have to look at. Are we going to do stage development plans? I mean, there's a lot of things that will come after this all gets settled at this near term. There's still work that we're going to have to be doing. And there may be minor tweaks that we have to make and things like that along the line. But I do agree that the only way we are going to tackle the affordability issue is to work together, because we can't do it, and it's getting harder and harder for any jurisdiction to really do it on their own anymore.
Chairman, if I may add, I'd like to just point out a few additional comments as well, specifically with regards to transportation and affordability, because I think it gets lost that the second highest cost per household is transportation. The city of Pasco, out of the 20 most populous cities in the state of Washington, has the 3rd highest transportation cost. That's higher than the city of Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma, Spokane. We are the 3rd highest. Housing and transportation is 47% of the average household's cost in the city of Pasco. 84% of the land in the city of Pasco that's residentially zoned does not allow multifamily units. And so while I think it's absolutely crucial for us to determine and understand and evaluate potential solutions to housing affordability, a significant part that is always missing is allowing more housing varieties. So while not everyone may not seek to live on a 4,000 square foot lot. Unfortunately, sometimes that may be all that an individual or household can afford. And the city of Pasco has numerous efforts underway right now at addressing flexible design standards and development standards within our zoning code to allow for more opportunities for infill development. And also we'll begin working on a housing action plan in 2021 that addresses exactly what I believe was asked at the last meeting and also at this one, which is what do we do specifically to mitigate affordable housing crisis? And I think what any jurisdiction across the country would tell you is that limiting housing supply in terms of lot minimums isn't the answer. If that was the case, then we'd be far better off than we are today. So simply allowing more land isn't the answer. It is also the types of varieties of units we allow and encourage in the city of Pasco has to be a part of the solution. And we're working on that with House Bill 1923 and also House Bill 1406, which I believe Franklin County is also participating in. Lastly, with regards to sewer and expansion of the urban growth area, keep in mind that the urban growth area, and I want to reiterate this, shall be based on sufficiently accommodating a 20-year population projection as projected by the Office of Financial Management and allocated by Franklin County. And Franklin County has allocated roughly 80%, and that's historically what Pasco makes up, 80% of the county's expected forecast to the city of Pasco. And what we have done through the environmental impact statement process and the land capacity analysis is indicated that the land within the 3,448 acres that we have requested to be part of the UGA sufficiently accommodates the 20-year forecast for the city of Pasco. And I realize that there are significant differences between alternative number 1, 2, and 3. But keep in mind that between the development of alternative number 2 on alternative number 3, the city of Pasco has ongoing proposals and projects that are in construction as of today for 200 units on 20th and A Street in Central Pasco, is finalizing a rezone with the City of Pasco Council actually in January for the Port of Pasco's project at Osprey Point. The city is also working on, again, significant revisions to the zoning code that allow more variety of housing types. So that is exactly how we were able to delineate a much more refined and compliant urban growth area. Again, complying not only with the RCWs, but I think, again, more importantly, with local policies the city of Pasco has set based on community responses and community input and the Franklin County planning-wide policy. So again, just want to reiterate that the entire purpose of the urban growth area shall be reserved for urban densities. And we believe that the proposal before the Planning Commission sufficiently accommodates 20 years of population growth for the city of Pasco. Thank you.
Any other comments that want to be addressed? Any clarification? Derek, Aaron, do we want?
I don't really have, I mean, just real quick, want to reiterate, as this is a non-action public hearing, there will be a formal or a action public hearing. It'll probably be scheduled in January after the second week. So it'll be in the third week or so like that, just because of the way the holidays are falling out and things, and notice requirements and whatnot. At that time, we will discuss whether or not the Planning Commission is ready to make its recommendation, or whether or not they want to hold more meetings regarding this item. Yeah, I mean, and one thing, you know, I believe it was Mr. Stromstad had spoken about an aerial, so I'll make sure that you guys get a copy of that in the near term. Aerial of Road 68. I'll also highlight on that where the Oberdeen property, the 15 acres and all that stuff is, and I'll get that to you. But you'll have a full-blown staff report and everything else, and that's also part of what is going to dictate when we hold the actual public hearing, is what all we're going to need to be getting together to get that staff report completed. So we also have, the noticing that we have to do at the state level, 60-day review and things like that. So that's all I really had to say. And I just want to thank the members of the public that took the time out to speak on the matter, and all of the staff and planning commission, as well as the city representatives, Mr. White and Mr. Gonzalez. I know you guys have put a lot of work into this. You've been doing this a long time now. And again, and Nicole, for your support. Because I'm coming up to I want you all to have a happy holidays and a good new year. And I hope it's safe. And that's, I think, all I have to say right now. So, thank you.
Aaron, it looked like you was wanting to say something.
No, I just was reiterating that there's nobody else, I guess, new that's called in or anything. So
I guess I have one question for the city. Without pushing north, do you have enough land available for increased housing demand that is taking place now, that is needed?
Yeah. Go ahead, Rick. You can go ahead.
Well, just briefly, Mr. Chairman. No, we don't, unless we significantly increase densities within the existing urban boundary. That has been a sensitive spot historically. I mean, it certainly can be pursued, but however, sentiment seems to indicate that, and the practical difficulties of urban services in the Riverview area in particular are significant and not easily overcome. It is very unlikely that we will be able to accommodate additional density within the Riverview area without expansion of our proposed urban area.
Okay. Okay.
Just as a clarification, real quick, part of the reason that, in the EIS that we had a reduction in, or that the proposal has a reduction of acreage is because of some of these items that, and this is my understanding, some of these items Mr. Gonzalez spoke about with the increased zoning and the work that the city's done. My understanding, those land use changes are part of what they were able to use to show that the 3,500 acres is going to be adequate. Without those changes, it would be more in that 4,800 acre range of the alternative two. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. In fact, just to summarize briefly, the alternative number one was no expansion, which deemed that the city cannot accommodate the growth in the current urban growth area. The alternative number two, which you saw in 2018, was the 4,800 or so acre expansion at primarily low density, large lot developments with very limited commercial. And alternative number three, which you have before you tonight, is has incorporated the recently adopted ongoing development regulation updates and a 3,400 acre expansion. So it's a little bit of both. And that was what was incorporated in alternative number three. And just for reference, I think it's important for us to understand what the density looks like across the city of Pasco and urban growth area. Our most dense part of the city, obviously, is Central Pasco at 8.5 dwellings an acre. It's probably one of the most dense areas in the region. The lowest is Riverview at about 2 units an acre, which is extremely difficult to redevelop because of the rural nature and development, which makes sense because it was rural at a point in time. And so for us to continue to expand and develop with 2 units an acre, I think it would be a disservice and a deterrent to Franklin County and really this region's economic stronghold in agriculture and manufacturing as a ag economy here. Every unit that we can place in the city of Pasco's urban growth area is one less lot we have to intrude upon into the rural or open areas in the county. And so I think that's important for us to also keep in mind as we move forward with this process. I think for staff here at the City of Pasco, I think we'd appreciate knowing if there were any specific comments or concerns from the Planning Commission of Franklin County that we haven't addressed. We obviously know about the public comments and not would, regardless of the sentiment, would encourage those to continue. However, it also would be helpful if we know if there was anything we should address that we haven't yet for the Planning Commission, so that we can appropriately address that in the next hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Roger, you want to say something?
I know staff indicated that we have the 650-page document from the city, which is a subset of our entire comprehensive plan. Will we be seeing that entire comprehensive plan?
Nicole? Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm still putting the finishing touches on that document to make sure that it's ready for the Planning Commission, and I'll be providing that to Eric this week or early next week, and then it'll be sent out to you. It has very few changes since the last workshops that occurred, and those are indicated in track changes so that you'll very quickly be able to identify stuff that you haven't already read through.
Okay, and is the expectation is that that is what we will be reviewing on January 5th?
We'll get you that out, but you know, those again, I've got to look at things. We'll see where that's at, and then we'll also. So no, did you say January 5th?
Correct.
No, January 5th is a conditional use permit and a subdivision application.
Okay. You scared me there. I have to have a tough time reading.
Well, no, you scared me because I'm going no, because that's not in any of the notices. So now
you mentioned a 60-day review period by the state. So I assume that takes place prior to the Planning Commission making its recommendation.
Prior to the board making this recommendation, usually simultaneous with the Planning Commission. So it'll go, the Planning Commission will make their whatever decision or recommendation, and then the 60-day clock regards when the item goes to the board for final adoption.
Okay.
So we may be 30 days into the process with Commerce's review before it goes to the Planning Commission. Might be 45 days. Not usually, but I'm just saying it.
Okay.
Or the other way around. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So are we through with the urban growth plan of Pasco for tonight? Okay. Derek, where are we as far as the bylaw issue? This is a different subject now. Kent and Roger and I were involved with that.
Right.
Roger had made some suggestions, which were pretty good suggestions, shortening things up. How do you want to handle that?
We can bring that to when you guys feel that it's ready. You let me know, and then we'll get that scheduled to come to you for that adoption. Again, it's a document that I'll need to get out to you guys in advance as you review it. And then we'll follow the process for how we make those amendments. Exactly when, like I said, it's going to be when you feel that the document is ready, that it's free. The committee, I guess you could say, the bylaw subcommittee, when you think that it's ready to go and you want to propose it, then we'll move it.
Well, it's something that we need to run to the other commissioners as well. And
that's what I'm saying. When you believe that it's ready for me to kick it out to them, I will kick it out to them.
Well, then I guess this would be something we probably, first let me ask is it 5th of January when we have our next meeting, right?
Correct.
How busy of an agenda do we have for that evening?
We have a subdivision, the basically what may know as the Pomona property. That's what, and then we have a conditional use permit for a dairy farm expansion.
We have two?
Yeah, the problem is that we wouldn't be able to get that out to folks with sufficient time to really review it before the 5th. I mean, the 5th is in 9 days. Something like that.
Right. But that is something that we could possibly, now Kent, you won't be at this next meeting, right?
I cannot be. I'll be hospitalized. I go into surgery on January 5th.
Okay.
And I won't be around for a few days after that, I'm sure.
But it's all virtual, man. We'll bring you an iPhone.
So I would suggest then that we push this forward till February.
Okay.
To where Roger, Kent, and I could possibly be at our next meeting, and then we could at least discuss the bylaws and see if there's any more that we want to talk about.
Okay, we can also talk a little bit about this on the 5th.
So Matt just sent a text or chat thing. He's kind of confused about, because if we kind of closed the non-action public hearing part before we moved into talking about the bylaws.
Okay.
And so that's kind of, he was kind of bringing that up. Yeah.
Well, I'll officially close the city part or the public hearing on the city, and I don't think there's needs to be any more discussion as far as the bylaws go.
I do have a question for Kent and the chair. Would you prefer if I clean that up, because the tracking changes just make that absolutely useless to read as far as I'm concerned?
Well, the suggestions that you that I received from you, Roger, were pretty good suggestions, and it would shorten the bylaws up.
I would provide, usually you would provide what we call a dirty copy. It's got all the corrections, and a clean copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
And then we can maybe address that in February at our February meeting.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So if there's nothing else.
If you want to meet before January 5th, I can do that. I'm amenable to that. But from January 5th on, for at least maybe a week to 10 days, I might have trouble making any meeting.
Well, that's why I said we could delay this until February.
Okay.
And then this way we could, Roger can I guess, make up a separate version with his recommendations, and then we can go through it possibly at our February meeting, and then finalize it, later on or something.
Okay.
Yep.
So if there's nothing else, I will close this public hearing. Hearing none.
Just one, Roger, just one thing. Email, you have my email, so please, if you're making any messages, please send them to me also, besides Chairman Claude Parrott.
Okay. And yes. And I don't know, maybe we'll want to get together after you're better, because I know everybody's really busy through the.
Whatever works. You have all my contact information.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will close the meeting unless there's something else. Consider it closed. You all have a blessed Christmas.
Thank you all for your participation.